Hey guys, what's up? It's Ripe again. In today's video, my entitled lazy brother demands we buy him a house because his wife is pregnant and he is jealous of our property. He ends up stealing our identity to get what he wants. Here is what happened. Let's dive right into the stories. My brother and I have a bit of a tense relationship, to say the least. We walk different paths in life, and while I do believe that you can do anything you want, you need to live with the consequences of that. I'm gonna give you a mental picture of my brother so the things that he does in this story make a little more sense. My brother holds jobs for only a few months at a time before he gets promptly fired. One time he was fired for stealing, and his reasoning to me was that if they are only gonna pay him minimum wage, then he should take what he deserves by taking merchandise. I think he was turning it around and selling it, so he was lucky that he only got fired. Most of the time it is because he simply cannot be bothered to show up to work on time or at all. He'll be hungover or simply not feel like going. Everybody in the family has tried to help my brother, but he seems to not want to fix or change his life. He is very much addicted to alcohol, and my parents offered to pay for rehab entirely to try and help him get sober. He refused though, and instead thinks that it is our responsibility as his family to help him. The thing is that after so many handouts and seeing that he is just using us at this point, we don't want to. He met a woman that is very similar to him, minus the alcoholism, when it comes to not being able to have or keep a job. They got married only after knowing each other for 3 months and basically tried to mooch off of both families. One thing is that they actually don't own a home and instead try to stay with one of their parents or even siblings at times. I let them stay once for a week and it was the worst decision I ever made. They were messy, rude and ate everything in the fridge with no remorse of what they were doing. That was when the girlfriend, who I will name Karen because she kind of acts like a one, got pregnant. Once she was pregnant, basically nobody wanted to help them anymore because they knew it would also mean helping take care of their future baby. Everybody was at their ends with my brother and his wife taking advantage and being lazy. My brother came to my house one day and I was worried that he was gonna ask about staying with me again. My wife would kill me if I said yes, and I would hate myself for it as well. Instead though, he started saying something that made him come off as even more entitled than I ever thought possible of him before. Brother, so I noticed that you didn't really do anything about the fact that Karen is pregnant. Me? What do you mean? Brother, don't play dumb, dude. We have nowhere to live and we are gonna have a baby soon. You should really do the right thing and buy us a house. And yes, he actually wanted me to gift him an entire house just because he managed to get somebody pregnant. I stood in shock, taking what I heard in before I could come up with an answer. Me? I'm not buying you a house. I cannot even believe that you are coming over here to say that to me. Brother, you have to buy us a house. You're my family and it's part of your job to make sure that your future niece or nephew does not end up living on the streets. Me? First of all, it's your responsibility to make sure that Karen and your future baby are taken care of. There is nothing stopping you from working except for the fact that you cannot stop drinking and get off your ass to go look for one job. Second, I don't know where you even got the idea that I have enough money to buy a house. I closed the door on him before I totally lost it and started screaming out the door at him. I called up my parents to tell them what he did in case he went over to them next and started with them. They were also shocked that he was demanding something like that, and it turns out Karen was also doing it to her side of the family. Anyway, the obvious thing was that nobody was gonna buy them a house as a present for getting pregnant. I thought at that point things were done and over with regarding the whole situation. However, I was very wrong. A few months went by and I had not heard much from or about my brother. I assumed that somebody took them in, or maybe he realized he had to go out and get a job in order to afford rent somewhere like most people. It turns out that was not the case, and I found out once I started getting some very weird calls on the phone. I don't get many spam calls, but when I hear one talking about money I owe on a credit card that I know I don't have, I don't really give it much thought and just hang up. That was until the letters started coming. These were very legit looking bank letters talking about how I owed thousands of dollars on my cards, and if I didn't pay them, it was gonna go to collections. I did not have that kind of money and had no idea what they were talking about. I got all 3 banks to agree to wait until I could come down there before they sent the debt to collection. All 3 bank interactions went about the same, so I will just give you the highlights of the first one I went down to. I showed them the letters and tried to explain that I never opened a card. They of course did not believe me and told me that I did in fact open a card. With a lot of back and forth, I was able to get access to what was being bought on the cards and seeing that it was being sent to a random apartment. It was also where a monthly rent was coming out of the card that I could see. I figured out that it was brother who had opened the cards under my name and wanted to know what could be done. Turns out, to move the debt to him, I would have to prove that he was the one that opened the card under my name instead of me. My thought was that if he was using my name for the cards, he was probably also using it for the rent. I went down to the apartment building and found the super before explaining the entire situation. He told me that somebody under my name was renting, and when I showed him a picture of my brother, he confirmed. He said he thought it was a little weird he kept changing the card he was paying rent with, but assumed he was stressed because of the pregnant wife. He agreed to testify that it was my brother living at the apartment using a card with my name. I had to take him to court and show all the evidence that I had. This included the testimony of the super, footage of him in the banks, all the stuff being sent to his apartment, and my real signature that looked nothing like the one my brother forged. He did not have any defense except for saying that they were my cards and I got them for him because his wife was pregnant and promised to pay for everything. He had nothing on his side to prove innocence, and the judge did not want to make light of credit card fraud. Not only did the entire credit move to him, but he was also arrested and sent to jail. Messing with the bank is a really bad idea, and he got 7 years in jail plus the debt he could not afford. And now Karen was not charged with anything, but now also had no place to live and was pregnant. The last I heard of her was that she ended up having to give the custody of the baby to her parents because she did not have anywhere to live and could not care for the baby. I just hope that the baby turns out better than either one of his parents. And yeah, Ripe Stars, I gotta say, that is quite the sad story because I really feel bad for the baby. Obviously, the baby did not deserve to have parents like this. Anyway, if you enjoy my daily stories, I would really appreciate it if you could like the video, since that would help me tremendously. Thank you so much. Anyway, the next one is titled, "There is a moving truck blocking my driveway and I have to leave for a wedding." And yes, this story is from r/legal advice, where we have not been for a long time, and I'm kind of glad to be back. Anyway, the location is New York. The renters next door are moving out. Their U-Haul is massive and it is blocking 75% of my driveway or even more. There is no room to go around it and my car cannot make it up the curb. I'm going to a wedding today. It is a little over 100 miles away and I need to be on the road in about an hour. I'm gonna take an Uber up there if necessary and will probably have to do the same to get from my hotel to the venue and back. I am hoping to catch a ride home with someone in the morning, but I don't like the odds, so that's probably gonna be another Uber. Looks like this will cost a little north of $500, which is not a life-altering expense, but I don't intend to shrug my shoulders and eat it. What I have done in order, starting around 9 AM, knocked on the door, no answer, tried the same a couple more times since then, but still no answer. Then called the homeowner. He gave me 2 numbers, I left voicemails and sent texts to both, but no response. He is also trying to get a hold of these a-holes, but nothing yet. Called the police and said they would send somebody over. However, they have not sent somebody over yet. I called a few towing companies. The first 2 did not have the right equipment to move this type of truck, and the third sent a guy out to take a look. The same issue, but he said they would not be able to get the truck linked up either way because it is parked about a foot behind a full dumpster. Just wonderful. I took about 7,000 pictures of the truck and my driveway. Guess I got some photography experience points. Questions: I definitely want to sue these pricks if I have to shell out for 200 plus miles of Uber rides. Will I have a case? Is there anything else I should do? Update edit number 2. I'm officially en route to the wedding in an Uber. The homeowner / their soon-to-be former landlord is gonna swing by this afternoon to make sure the truck is gone, and he has promised to make sure my driveway is clear by the time I get home one way or the other. Thanks again for all of the suggestions. Edit: the clock ran out and I've got an Uber coming to get me. Appreciate the advice I received anyway. By the way, I tried the fire department, but they said it would be a while before someone gets here because this is not an emergency. The truck is not blocking a hydrant or anything, so I get it. And then someone in the comments suggested, call the cops and ask if you have the right to have a vehicle blocking your driveway towed. I think that might work in some states. A private tow company might be willing to come out there and do it. ETA, looks like you need a cop in New York to authorize the removal. Shouldn't stop you from bluffing that they are on the way and the U-Haul is gonna end up in a tow lot unless U-Haul customer service figures it out. Alternatively, you could bluff to U-Haul that this is what you're gonna do. Doubt they want one of their vehicles in a tow lot. Update to the story, I'm just gonna call the neighbor's landlord Bob because the neighbor's landlord or the homeowner creates some awkward sentences. So Bob texted me shortly after I got to the hotel yesterday to let me know that he had tracked down the neighbors. He followed up to confirm that the truck had been moved while I was at the wedding and I just got home to an unobstructed driveway. I'm actually heading right back up there because my wife and I took a few days off from work to do some hiking in the area. She was in the bridal party and all of the bridesmaids had been up there since Friday. Bob wants to cover my expenses himself and then see if he can figure out a way to get reimbursed from the security deposit. I'm gonna decline this offer because I know NY is a very tenant-friendly state, so it seems like Bob's plan could end with his soon-to-be previous tenants putting him over a barrel. I'm not gonna go into detail, but he is a great guy who only started renting his house out because of a crappy situation he found himself in a couple of years ago. I'd feel terrible if he wound up in another crappy situation by going out of his way to make things right for me when that should not be his responsibility in the first place. Some of yesterday's righteous indignation has faded and I'm starting to think it might be a good idea to forget about the money. It was not enough to have an impact on my budget and letting it go would allow me to wash my hands of these a-holes together. I'm gonna put it out of my mind for the time being and focus on enjoying the mini vacation that my wife and I have planned. Thanks again for all of the advice. Update number 2, so it turns out the idiot family did not do a particularly good job of planning their move. Their lease actually ended on 15th of October and Bob had already given them 2-week-long extensions without charging any additional rent. Bob did not do this out of the goodness of his heart. He won't be moving back into the house until mid-November at the earliest. And decided to take the path of least resistance so he could wash his hands of these people with minimal conflict. The idiots asked Bob for another extension last night. Apparently a bunch of their furniture did not fit in the U-Haul and they won't be able to pick it up for another 2 weeks or so. Bob told them this won't be a problem as long as they reimburse me for the Ubers, which caused a bit of a temper tantrum, but they ultimately agreed to it. I had actually decided that I was gonna let the whole thing go because much like Bob, I just wanted to be done with these a-holes with minimal conflict. My wife and I are still upstate until tomorrow morning, and according to Bob, the idiots will be en route to their new place by the time we get home. Probably stating the obvious here, but I am more than happy with the way things turned out. Some people in the Best Of forum had some very kind things to say about my response to this situation, and I appreciate those comments very much. That being said, I know that choosing to forget about $500+ in order to avoid a headache is not an option for everyone. And my wife and I are very aware of how fortunate we are to be able to make that type of decision in the first place. She suggested that we should figure out a way to take a pay-it-forward approach now that we are going to be reimbursed, and I am 100% on board. We are currently leaning towards donating to a rent assistance or eviction prevention fund. I'm also definitely taking Bob out to dinner or something as soon as he has moved back and settled in. Once again, thanks for all of the advice and kind words. And the next one is titled, Am I the a-hole for reporting my neighbor to the HOA? My husband, 42 male, and I, 38 female, live in a townhouse community. It's a loop about 25 two-story buildings with 3 units in each building. There is no sidewalk except where guest parking are, and the rest of the street is rows of garages and the front doors are accessible through a walkway. My neighbors are a super close-knit group. The parents stick together, moms walk together, the kids play together. They don't really talk to anyone else who are not from their country. Most of them are younger couples with young kids. This loop has a sign by the entrance that says no skateboard, bicycle, etc. and the HOA made it clear that it is dangerous for kids to play outside as there is no sidewalk. During the pandemic, when there are no parks open and school went remote, they allowed kids to play outside the garages. It was loud and rowdy, but I totally understand why they do it. But as they started opening back up, schools and parks are back open, there is no change to the kids playing outside garages, and there are many incidents that could have been had. Husband almost ran over a 4-year-old when he was driving in, and kid ran out of the walkway while playing chase with other kids. Once we were backing out of the garage and 3 kids were on tricycles. 2 of them stopped when they saw the car backing out, but 1 didn't. Thank God for backup cameras. Other people in NB have complained to the HOA too, so the HOA tells them it's okay to play, but it needs parent supervision. Last week I was home alone and semi-naked, sports bra and underwear. I let my dog out to the small fenced backyard while I stood by the sliding door keeping an eye on the dog. A bunch of kids from that group were outside my fence. It's a grass area, and I think one of the older ones, about 12 years old, saw the doggo movement and wanted to see my dog. He climbed up my fence to have a looky and of course saw me instead half naked. I went upstairs and texted my husband. My husband was furious and asked which kid. I stood by my bedroom window and took a video of the kids to show which one. But at this very moment I instead caught these kids on video playing with a beach ball and it bounced off a parked car in the visitor parking area. I sent the video to my husband sent it straight to the HOA, board members got involved and a day later they sent an email to all tenants calling out the kids, banning them from playing outside except in the grass area, and then attached my frickin' video in the email. Because of the angle they know which window it was from, so they know it was me who recorded. They complained that I have no right to be recording their kids, but got shut down by the HOA because the kid admitted to climbing the fence and seeing me half naked. I am now getting death stares by moms every time we drive by or walk around the NB. Am I the a-hole for recording kids from my own house? Am I the a-hole for turning in evidence? And yeah, ripe stars, please let me know in the comments what you think about this story. Do you think that OP is the a-hole or not? A person in the comments said, not the a-hole, it is irresponsible of the parents to allow their kids to do whatever they want in the neighborhood. You have to teach them accountability now or they will never learn it. It seems the parents have not experienced much accountability in their lives either. As far as the recording goes, anything you can see from your property is fair game. And yeah, ripe stars, I would definitely agree with the comments here. It is super important to teach kids accountability, and just putting the blame on others always is definitely a really bad example, and as the parents, aka the role model, you certainly shouldn't do that. And the next one is titled, I sued my boss. First, some backstory. During my gap year between studies, I decided to work for Company N. Company N was run by a husband, Dave, and the wife, Karen, with their son, and basically treated their staff like a small family. All was well for about 2 months until I realized I had to ask for a day off since I wanted to attend the last Slayer concert the band would give in my country. There was about a month to go, so I sent an email asking for the day off and explaining why. This is where everything started to go downhill. I got a reply from the Karen and her reply was weird. She stated that's not how asking for a day off works. I was confused to say the least, not sure what to do. I thought she wanted a formal way of asking, so I wrote a more formal email asking for the day off. She shot an email back. I really had to think it through what I was doing, which made even less sense to me, but I was hopeful since I never really got a specific no. The next workday rolls around, I arrived, locked up my bike and headed inside ready for work. I immediately started looking for Dave to ask for answers. Before I could even open my mouth, he asked me, "Do you still want to go to that concert?" I didn't expect him to ask this so quickly, so I answered yes. The only thing he said back was, "Okay, take off your vest and you can go home." I was stunned, and while the words started to sink in, I looked at my colleagues which were just preparing for opening. When it finally sank in, anger flowed in. I'm not a confrontational person, so I simply took off my vest and gave it to Dave. Without a word I left and started biking home. When I got back home, I told my mother what happened. We started sending emails for extra info and got very Karen-like emails back. After a couple more emails which went basically nowhere, I looked up the laws for immediate dismissal. After reading up about it, I learned that in my country, somebody can only be immediately fired when caught stealing, frauding, the person is not able to do the work, or refusal to do the work. I did neither of these. A day or two later I met with my attorney and began the steps to sue Company N. I told my lawyer what happened in detail and he was very confident that I was in my right and she was not. So after trading even more emails between the three of us, we went to small claims. I came prepared in a suit with my attorney in tow and Karen showed up alone. I guess she assumed she won because she thought she was in her right. The trial began and I was as professional and objective as I could be. Karen did the same. Well, for about half of the trial. When she realized evidence was piling up against her, she resorted to calling me a spoiled brat, among other things I don't know the English translation for. I am safe to say that was the point the judge ruled in my favor. As per usual, I had to wait a month before I got the verdict black on white in the mail, but I won. It may have taken about 6 months from the moment I was told to go home to the point those 6 months of pay were transferred to my bank account, but it was 100% worth it. In the end, I went to the concert. It was the most awesome and most profitable concert I've ever been to in my life.